Everybody on here, and I'm coming to you with this month's video. It is great to be here. As you can see, I'm inside because we have some pretty chilly temps going on up here in the Northeast, and looks like my nose is itching already. But yeah, we're getting cold here, and thank goodness I am inside. Thank God for that, and being blessed with a little time. So I wanted to get these videos out for you and just share with you some key points of what is going on coming up. Coming up in February, we actually have some very nice, strong, unconditional love energy coming in. And that is going to be awesome. So I'm going to be talking today about four keys that you can use. I guess I should put my hand up or something, but four keys that you can use to loving people and to being loved. And I think that this is an important thing, especially in these times, because I know that there's a lot of people that are struggling with this love component. And this isn't necessarily like our love relationships, like a spouse or a partner, but this is happening between friends, between family members. And that is pretty challenging for people. So, for those that don't know, every year I put out a new edition of this book here. Oops, I got to get it turned. And that is the Code Journey for 2025. Every year, new edition comes out, and it's pretty exciting to have it come through. And these insights are in here. These different energetic patterns. I call them codes because it's like a language. It's things in this world are kind of what I think of as being coded, right? For being things are disguised within that. So our energetic patterns are disguised within different things. And I deduce a lot of things down to numbers and letters. But it blends over 50 different modalities in that work, none of which are used in the traditional ways. So it's kind of exciting to be able to have this gift to understand the energetic patterns that are present and and to see what's happening and what's spiking and what's active and current and all of that. So I encourage you to check that out on my website, compassioncodes.com. But this month, I'm talking about this component of these four keys to being to loving and being loved. And I think this is so important in our world. And this is going to hopefully help you maybe get past some of the differences that you have with people, help you to feel a little bit stronger in your relationships. Because one of the things I see going on with a lot of people is that they're in this battle. Like, where do I find that balance between standing in my truth, standing in my integrity, standing in my value and worth, and then loving people unconditionally? And how does that kind of fit together? So I think these 4 points will kind of cover some of those things and get you a good foundation for what you can work with in there. So the first point that I want to talk about is learn what others really need. So, and there's this balance too. When we're talking about this area, there's always this balance between, yes, of course, it's okay to receive, but most of the time, we want to focus on what we're giving. Because if we focus on what we're giving, we are naturally going to receive. The receiving is inherent in the giving. We don't need to sit around and go, well, I've given to this person, so much. Why aren't they giving anything back to me? And the reality of it is it doesn't have to come back from that person. And I know I've said that in previous videos before. Sometimes it comes back to us from other people. Sometimes we receive from people and then we may not give back to that person specifically, but their giving to us may allow us to give to somebody else. And it starts a chain of giving. So it's less important whether we get it back from that person or not. But when we are loving people, and especially when we're loving them unconditionally, we are going to get things back. So I try to anyways. I think I'm pretty good at it. I won't claim to be perfect. I'm not sure if anybody is totally perfect in a human existence, but I try to put out a lot of unconditional love for people, and that does come back to me. I do have people that come around and help me out when I really need it. And that is so important. So I don't sit there and keep score like, well, I've given so much of this person and I've given them, you know, X amount of hours in a week, but they're only giving me, 20 minutes in a week or something like that. And we don't want to be in the scorekeeping space because that actually pulls us out of the love. That actually pulls us out of that space because it's always about me, 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 me. What am I getting? And that's, one that brings us into controlling patterns, and that brings us into this kind of selfish aspect. And it's not, again, it's not wrong to receive. It's just we need to be open to allowing it to come in from wherever. And especially when we're clearing karmic patterns, especially when we're working through challenges, we may not be able to work through them with somebody in particular. And especially if that person isn't around anymore, like my parents aren't around anymore, my sister's not around anymore. There are people that aren't in my life anymore. And that's okay that they're not there. But if I need to clear something, then I can still clear that by working with other people. So I can still clear that component. So if I have something that is unresolved with somebody, and maybe like, for example, I was not able to be there when my mom passed. So, I can be there and help other people be there when their parents pass. I can encourage that. I can support them through that. And granted, it doesn't dismiss what has happened in my own family dynamics, but it does clear some of the energetic patterns to be able to support those connections. There are certain things that I probably didn't get to tell my mom enough, or that I didn't get to share with her. But in the end, I can come around and I can try to support other people in creating stronger relationships there. And again, that's how you clear the energetic patterns, um, if you can't, for some reason, do it in your own life. So let's get on to the points here. The first key is learn what others need and what they really need. Okay, so not just what you feel like giving them. And I understand that that's important too, because sometimes we can't give somebody what they need. And there's a variety of reasons, whether we're dealing with our own trauma, whether we don't have the resources for it, whatever it is, we may not be able to give them what we need, and we have to acknowledge and accept that. But maybe we can make a connection where we can get them what they need through somebody else, for example. But learning what they really need as opposed to just what we want to give them. And when we do this, this is really showing somebody, I really, really care about you. I really care about what your needs are, what is important to you, and not just how that's going to come back to me. So, for example, I have a friend, and many of you know that I do vehicle life. That's where I've been for a while, and that's okay. And that's, I'm managing my way through it, and I feel like I'm doing winter really well this year. But part of doing that is I have a friend who gave me a weighted blanket, which was so valuable for me this winter. It was incredible to have that because of the way it's created warmth for me. And she knew, look, I could take you out to a really nice dinner, or I could do this for you, or I could do that for you. But she knew that doing some of those things wouldn't be half as valuable for me as that blanket. And she said, hey, look, I've got this blanket around. It's never, ever been used. It is 2 years old, but it's never even come out of the box. And nobody that I know of has ever wanted to even look at it or use it. So you can have it. And if anybody knows that, I mean, those things aren't necessarily cheap. But what she was looking at, like, hey, you're telling me you need some weight because of on your body, because of the way it helps with circulation, it helps with the vagus nerve, it helps with a variety of different things that my body has to deal with. And so she says, maybe this would be really valuable for you and you could have this. So she's really thinking about what my needs are. She's tried it in different ways, but she doesn't necessarily have the ability to, give me a place to live, for example, or things like that. I mean, she's got certain doors that are open with that. If I had to, I could go stay at her house, under storm conditions or something like that. But for the most part, she's like, okay, I'm respecting where you're at. I'm respecting what you're needing. and here's something that could really work. So that has been a gift. And so she wasn't looking at like, hey, can she give me something equivalent back? It was just like, I care enough about your health. I care enough about your well-being. So please take this. And this is a big thing. And it doesn't always have to be a big, expensive sort of gift. When we look at these things, it can even be small things. I mean, you look at somebody who's elderly and they're living alone, and while we don't want to make assumptions about it, maybe that person would just love to have you come sit and have a cup of tea and have some conversation once or twice a week, if you can spare that. So it doesn't really cost you anything. They just want some conversation, and that brightens their day. And that is something that they really need, to have that personal interaction in there, and to be able to share things with somebody, and to have somebody care enough to just spend some time with them. Looking at these sorts of things. So I think that this is valuable and important. And I know myself, there's so many times I look at things and I say, I don't know what I could do for somebody. Like we have a local animal shelter, and I've been putting in some volunteer time there a couple of days a week. And I felt like I can't do all of the cage cleaning and some of those more physically labor stuff because of injuries and variety of things that I have that I deal with. But I can go in and brush the cats. I can go in and give them some attention. Well, that is filling a need that they really have there, because while everybody else is running around doing the cage cleaning and changing out litter boxes and doing all of those things, they oftentimes don't get the time to just spend with the animals and to really be with them and communicate with them and to brush them and to do those types of things. So it's been a great balance for them. It's been a great balance for me, giving me a break in my schedule and getting to have that interaction. So look at what somebody actually needs. And again, we don't want to assume what they need necessarily, but I think a lot of times we can figure it out. Like if you have somebody that is very financially well off, or they're living a very materialistic lifestyle, okay, they don't really need stuff. They don't need more money. They don't need certain things, but maybe, something that's just more personalized for them, something that just really touches their heart, that they can cherish in a different way. Or again, time. Time is a huge thing. I think it's actually one of the most valuable things. Or, even baked goods. Like a friend of mine, she's like, I can't go out and see, my daughter for Christmas, and we're not able to make this connection. But what did she do? She sent her a box full of baked goods. And, these sorts of things are incredibly touching. And I think that, these are some of those things that, yeah, it costs some money to ship stuff, but it was such a personalized thing. And I remember my mom doing some things like that when I was younger and I was away at camp, and she would send me, a box of cookies and things like that to share around with everybody. And it was just so cool. It was exactly what I really needed. And I think sometimes identifying some of these needs help. So that's the first step. Now, the second key that we have is know who we are today and who they are today. Okay. A lot of times we get wrapped up in holding the assumptions that people are always the way that they have been. And this is a tough one to get by, because a lot of times we try to, give a little leeway and say, well, maybe they've changed. And then we find out they haven't changed. Well, yeah, you have to kind of stay on top of that. And sometimes you're going to, it's going to sting a little bit because you don't know where somebody's at. And yet at the same time, we need to know, look, I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago for that matter. I'm definitely not the same person I was 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Very, very different desires in the world, very different preferences, very different choices being made in my life. And so, if people just saw me for the way I was back then, they might not even give me a chance. in things, because I was on some not so favorable paths back then. And I'm sorry, my nose is really itching today. But looking at people for who they are, and we need to keep in mind, and we can all say it, right? Who we were in our 20s is not usually who we still are in our 30s or our 40s or our 50s. And there's a lot of maturing that goes on, and there's a lot of shifting of our perceptions of the world and what's important to us and things like that. And it does change a lot. And if somebody has kids during that time, that changes who they are a lot and where their focus is. So we want to make sure that we're not judging people based on who they used to be. So really looking at people for who they are. Who am I today? Who are other people in my life today? Have they changed? Have they made adjustments? And when we do this, again, it gives us the ability to love somebody instead of just holding on to grudges, instead of just residing in that past energy that maybe wasn't so favorable. And likewise, it can be flipped. Maybe they were really favorable at one point in their life, and now they've taken some bad turns and they've just headed down some bad paths. And we need to recognize that too, because sometimes when people are headed down these really rough paths, they don't know how to receive love. They have so many walls up, so much blocks up. A lot of people have trauma of one sort or another in there, and it really hinders them sometimes in being able to receive love from other people. And I wish it wasn't true, but we do have a lot of people in our society that are dealing with, whether it's childhood trauma or regular PTSD or some other type of trauma. Most people have been through traumatic experiences of one sort or another, especially by the time they've hit 30 or 40 years old in their life. And this is one of those things that we just have to recognize that maybe they're just not in a space to receive it. Now, does that mean that we don't give any love out? No, we can still love unconditionally. We just have to acknowledge that they may not receive it. They may not be in a space to appreciate it, but that doesn't mean we stop giving it. I kind of live under this philosophy, just be kind to people, no matter who they are. And that doesn't mean I won't stand my ground. That doesn't mean I let people walk all over me. But at the same time, as long as I'm exerting the kindness, that's what matters, because what I'm putting out, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, those are the things that are going to impact my life. Whether somebody receives it or not is almost irrelevant in a way. What matters is that I'm putting it out, that I'm treating people with that love. And inevitably, the more that I stand in that, the stronger I'm in that, the more that I will receive love back. Again, maybe not from a specific person, but from people around me. And I get to the point now where if I don't show up someplace for a few days, because I've come inside for a few days or something, or I'm out of town doing a presentation or something like that, that I have people that are concerned. They're like, I'm glad you're okay. I actually have people that will drive to some of the regular spots that I'm in just to see if my vehicle is there, not because they're stalking me, but because they care about me. And so I'm receiving this love back in different ways. And we want to, on the third key here, is consider what will others remember us by, and how much, unconditional love and peace are we giving to others? And again, I kind of make this my rule of mind. Can I give somebody some sort of peace? And again, this is not a self-sacrificing thing. This is not actually, when you're doing these acts, you feel good about doing them. So you're being fulfilled in the process of doing these acts. It's not like, oh, well, I can't believe they didn't even say thank you to me for holding the door, or something like that. If I'm just focused on what am I giving out to people, then I can always know that I've left them with a favorable imprint or a positive imprint in their life. And I never have to worry about how somebody's going to remember me. There are always going to be those people, right, that are living in their judgments, living in their assumptions, whatever it is. and that's their business, but that is theirs to deal with. Okay. And they're not going to look at anybody else favorably, no matter who it is or what it is or any of that. And obviously, people who are very lost in the materialism and things like that, if they're not getting what they want, or something isn't what it's not materialistically based or something like that, then they're just going to be grumpy no matter what. But that's theirs to deal with. If they want to be grumpy, that's their business. But I can still leave a favorable imprint. And, sometimes we make those impressions and we don't even realize it. Somebody else, again, they might be in that grumpy space, but you treat them with unconditional love, you treat them with kindness. And, lo and behold, they may come back 5 years later. And I've had this happen. People come back several years later and it's like, I was such a whatever on this day, but you still treated me nice and you were still kind to me. And I will never forget that. That changed my life that day. And we don't always see it and we don't always know when it happens. But again, the key is, what are we putting out? What are we giving to others? Um, and let it always be a favorable impression. I mean, granted, we all have our bad days, but we don't want to take those out on others. If we want to go home and, you know, knock the pillow around or something like that, that's your business. I like to go for a walk in the forest. That is one of my best ways to diffuse myself or to just work through things. But not that I get to where I need to be diffused too much anymore, fortunately, but I've done a lot of work to get there. So just remembering, if I'm putting that out all the time, if I'm putting that kindness out, regardless of whatever they say or do back, then I never have to worry about it. And again, my rewards come from what I'm doing, not, they're not based on what somebody else can receive. And thank God for that. Honestly, thank God for that it's based on my actions. And again, when I can stay out of my own way and not be sitting there going, well, I'm not getting this back, or I'm not getting what I want, or this person isn't doing anything and I'm making all of this effort. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if they're not giving something back, because the point again is what am I giving out? Because it's what I'm giving out that is going to end up taking care of me in the long run. It's kind of like, if I take care of myself and others have got to do their self, and as long as I'm nice, whether I agree with them or don't agree with them, it doesn't really matter. What matters is how I'm treating somebody, because that's what's going to impact my life the most. So staying in that space is going to be a great thing. And then our fourth point on this topic is, how do you let others know you love them, and how do they show you? And often this is through what we would consider boring tasks or boring things. And we want to look at these small things and we want to acknowledge them. And I think sometimes this shows up more in family, this shows up more in relationships probably, but also sometimes friends can fall into this area as well. And these are all the little things that most of the time we never think about, right? When somebody takes the trash out, they're saying, I love you. I don't want you to live in filth. I don't want you to live in something that's going to turn toxic and, be a problem for you with breathing because moldy food is in the trash can or whatever it is. It's small things like cleaning the house, making meals. These are all things that are ways of saying, I love you. Um, and sometimes those I love yous are tough, right? Sometimes that I love you comes in the form of, okay, it's time to get up and you need to go do your responsibilities. You need to handle things. You need to get to your event, and not letting you get out of things. Sometimes that is the I love you. We oftentimes think, oh, it's some grand gesture or somebody taking us to dinner or going on vacation or bringing flowers home or different things like that. And yes, sometimes those things are included as well. They can be counted as well. But I really want you to focus in and think about the really small everyday things. And when we start to do this, we start to realize that actually people love us a lot more than we realize, and that we are also putting out a lot of love that we don't think about. And that brings us back to considering when we're doing these daily tasks, when we're doing these everyday things that we don't necessarily think about, like fixing dinner at the end of the day for the family, or um, picking up organic food so that you're eating things that aren't toxic, or um, I mean, it could again be small things. You might just even put a little note in somebody's lunch and say, I love you. I hope you have a great day. They can be the smallest of things. It's cleaning the house, it's dusting things, it is making the bed in the morning. These are all ways that we um, tell somebody that we love them through our actions. So I really encourage you to take a little time and sit back and say, what are all the things somebody does? And a lot of times we just think, well, they've got to contribute. That's part of their tasks and their responsibilities and part of being in this relationship or this family. And yes, I understand we have to share the responsibilities, but if we don't love somebody, we don't end up doing those things at all. Even when it feels a little forced sometimes, they're still allowing their love to come through. And I think that that's the pieces that we really need to be acknowledging, is going into some of these deeper layers instead of the most obvious, extravagant ways, because sometimes the most heartfelt ways of saying I love you are through these daily little things. It's saying, hey, I get it. You're not feeling well tonight. You've got a headache or whatever. So why don't you go lay down and I'll make dinner instead? Or go get some rest. Or I remember an ex-boyfriend that used to, if he knew I had a really rough day, he would draw a bath for me when I got home. And he would draw a bath for me with some candles and some rose petals, and just say, you go take a nice long bath, and when you're done, I'll have dinner ready. And I mean, those are the things that let you know that you're loved. Those are the things that let you know that somebody really cares. And those are the small little things that we can do for somebody else, so never underestimate the most mundane things as um, in tasks and chores, because oftentimes they are forms of saying I love you. So there you go. Those are your 4 keys to loving and being loved. Learn what others really need. Know who you and they are today. Know what will know what impression you're leaving on others, what they're going to remember you by. Be conscious of that, and how much unconditional love and peace you're giving to others. The more, the better. Again, whether they can receive it or not. And 4, letting others know you love them, and being aware of how they show you that they love you through these, basic so-called boring tasks in life and chores. And acknowledge that and realize that none of those things really have to be done. And when people don't care, they don't do them. They won't follow through on their end of the bargain. They'll always have some reason that they can't do them. So there you go. And that's the monthly video. And I hope you guys have a February that is full of love, full of blessings over the next month, full of giving love and full of receiving love for you. And again, if you want to pick up a copy of the Code Journey, my book, you can just pop right over to my website, compassioncodes.com, and you'll find it over there. On the goods tab, go to the Code Journey, and I've got direct links to get you into the purchase pages. Take care, everybody, and I will see you next month.